If you've watched my videos before, you know all the wonderful things that make Raleigh one of the fastest growing cities in the country. Things like our 4 full seasons, beautiful greenery, booming food scene, top-tier education and job market, and relative affordable cost of living. But what surprises most people when they move to the Triangle region of North Carolina? Today, I'm going to explore some of those more nitty-gritty things like what it costs to renew your car or why we don't have basements. My name is Matt Martin, and I'm a realtor in the Raleigh area of North Carolina. Not only am I a transplant to the area since 2021, but I've helped tons of clients relocate to the Triangle region. And if you're looking to do the same, I'd love to help you too. And if you want to see more videos like this, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe right down below. So yes, I have a little different backdrop today as I'm in Florida for the holidays, but the business of getting new content out never ends. So I hope you enjoy the view. All right, when we moved to Raleigh in February 2021, there were so many things we knew we already loved, but there have been a lot of surprises, both good and bad, over the past few years. And let me start this off by saying that some of these things may not seem that foreign to you, depending on where you currently live, but they definitely were new to us coming from New York City and California before that. First off, let's talk about general geography and how people talk about getting around town. The Triangle region wasn't really built on a grid, so there are a ton of roads that bisect, change names mid-route, or don't have much rhyme or reason to their layout. For example, near downtown Raleigh, you have Person Street running north, which splits to become Mordecai Drive or Wake Forest Road. But that Wake Forest Road is not to be confused with the other Wake Forest Road that runs to its north yet never touches this Wake Forest Road. Then Wake Forest Road turns into Atlantic just about a mile down the road, and then Atlantic turns into Litchford Road, which intersects with Falls of Noose Road, but many locals call it Falls of the Noose Road because that was the old name. So learning how to get around town is definitely a bit tougher than in other major cities that are built on grids. That's further complicated by the fact that Raleigh has so many hills, and while that contributes to the absolute beauty of the city, it makes it so that you don't really ever see the horizon or major geographical landmarks to help guide you. So a lot of learning how to navigate just comes from repetition. Even once you know your way around some, Raleigh has a ton of highways, and many of the locals will refer to the roads by their highway number, even if the road has a name. So Creedmoor Road is also Highway 50, and locals will often switch between the two. Glenwood Avenue runs from downtown Raleigh all the way to Durham. Oh yeah, that's another surprise. Raleigh and Durham are two totally separate cities whose downtowns are about 20 miles apart from one another. You can check out my video on Raleigh versus Durham here, but Glenwood Avenue shares its name with Highway 70. So when you move here, don't beat yourself up if you have to use your GPS to get everywhere. I'm 3 years in and do a victory dance anytime I can get from point A to B without it. Oh, and speaking of getting around, that brings me to the next big surprise, the car renewal tax. Here in North Carolina, you pay an annual renewal fee of approximately 1% of the estimated value of your car, plus about $175 to $200 more if you drive an electric car. So if you drive a $50,000 electric car, that's a $500 base fee, plus around $200 electric car fee for a total annual renewal fee of nearly $700. If you drive a gas car with a remaining estimated value of $10,000, you're looking at a renewal fee of about $100. And while that renewal fee, which is actually categorized as a property tax, was a bad surprise for us, we were very pleasantly surprised with how low the other taxes are here. State income taxes are only 4.25%. There's no city income taxes anywhere in the state, and property taxes hover around 1% of property value, which is much lower than in many parts of the country. The first year I did my taxes here, I asked my accountant what my payment would have been if I still lived in New York City, and it was almost double. So that savings was more than enough to cover the higher than expected car renewal fee. All right, we'll jump from those scary numbers to a fun surprise, and that's the lingo that you may need to adjust to when you move here. We all know about y'all, and that's a quick one you'll definitely pick up if you don't say it already. But here, you don't turn on or turn off the lights, you cut them on or cut them off. That applies to more than just lights though. It can be used to talk about utilities in general or even the water spigot. Then there's might could, which is just a more polite way of saying maybe. And of course, we can't forget bless your heart, which can either be the endearing term it sounds like or a very southern way to tell someone to Well, I'll let you look that one up yourself. Okay, so what about real estate? Well, the first thing that surprises a lot of folks is that we don't really have basements here. That's because our soil is red clay, which is a sponge with water and gets super heavy. Heavy, wet soil pushing up against a standard height basement wall would be a recipe for disaster over time. So it's just not done here. You will see homes that are built on slopes that have walkout basements, but your typical triangle area home will not have one. Instead, homes are either built on slabs, in which case you'll typically find your mechanicals like HVAC and water heater in the attic or mechanical rooms, or they're built on crawl spaces, which will usually house most of your mechanicals. In terms of the buying process, the thing that surprises everyone pretty universally is the due diligence fee. This is so unique to North Carolina that I made a whole video on it, which you can find here. But essentially, it's a non-refundable fee that is paid directly to the seller upon offer acceptance to give you access to a negotiated period of time to do your inspections, appraisal, and other due diligence. Since this money is non-refundable, it means that even if the inspection returns something you didn't expect, you will likely still forego that fee if you walk away from the deal. Again, this concept took up an entire video, so there's a lot more nuance to discuss before you kick off your real estate search, and it's the first thing I make sure all my buyers fully understand before we start seeing properties. Another thing that surprised us when we moved here revolves around alcohol sales. North Carolina has some of the strictest alcohol sales laws in the country, so liquor can only be sold in state-run stores known as ABCs, but you can get beer, wine, and seltzers in the grocery store. ABCs are closed on Sundays and holidays, but there's a big push in the state Congress right now to get that Sunday rule lifted so the ABCs would be open every day of the year except Thanksgiving and Christmas. Another part of that legislative push would undo the state's ban on happy hours, which is a huge surprise to many people moving here. Currently, restaurants can offer all-day drink specials, but they cannot offer happy hour style specials that only run during certain hours. Somewhat surprising given those strict laws, Raleigh, Durham, and Cary have all recently enacted social districts where people can stroll with open containers purchased at participating venues, which is definitely not something you find in many other cities around the country. Another major surprise for us, especially moving from New York City, was a very welcome one, and that's the lack of honking. Truly, no one honks here unless it's an emergency. So if you're coming from a place where honking is just another form of communication, you're gonna have to learn to resist that urge here. I've definitely found myself having to talk myself down from time to time, especially since North Carolina drivers were just ranked the 5th worst in the country. The first time you get to a 4-way stop and no one knows what to do, you'll definitely understand why. All right, one last one, and this is kind of silly, but it surprised me when we moved to Raleigh, and that was everyone's knowledge about grass of all things. From Bermuda to fescue to zoysia, locals know their grass and have very strong opinions about which to plant and why. I definitely won't bore you with the details here, though I now get it more than I ever thought I would, so I'm happy to discuss it offline. In general, residents of the Triangle are big into gardening and landscaping, and I've been very pleasantly surprised with how many plant species I can now identify just after a few years here. So whether you've got a green thumb or not, be prepared to learn a lot about horticulture here. So those are the biggest surprises we encountered when moving to Raleigh, North Carolina. If you've relocated to the Triangle region, let me know what surprised you the most, good or bad, in the comments below. And if you're interested in buying or selling in the Triangle region, I'd love to connect. All my contact information is included here.